When life presses in and everything feels like it's drifting out of control, there comes a moment when you have to choose between constantly wrestling with worry or learning how to fully surrender. This sermon opens with the reminder that even when we don't see it, God is still working behind the scenes, aligning moments, shifting atmospheres, preparing outcomes that don't match the chaos we're standing in. Sometimes the delay is not denial, it's preparation. Sometimes the silence is not absence, it's strategy. The sudden shift you're praying for won't always come with a warning. It won't always come gently. There are moments where God steps in abruptly, interrupts the spiral of our thoughts, and proves that what felt impossible was never hard for him. This is a call to stop feeding the fear that keeps rehearsing what could go wrong and start nurturing the faith that dares to believe things can turn in an instant. You don't have to understand how it will happen. You just have to stand in expectation that it will. There is a part of you that has been taught to believe that if you can just control every detail, pre-plan every outcome, and calculate every risk, then maybe you can avoid disappointment, maybe you can protect yourself from failure, maybe you can keep life from catching you off guard. But control is a heavy thing to carry when you were never designed to hold the weight of outcomes in your own hands. You try to manage everything, and still life proves that it doesn't move according to your schedule. Doors close after you've done all you can to keep them open. People change after you've poured your heart into consistency. Opportunities slip through your fingers even when you showed up with excellence. And there's a voice inside that wonders why all your effort still isn't enough. But maybe it's because the breakthrough you're waiting for was never about how strong your grip is, but how willing you are to release. Control feels safe, but it keeps your hands too full to receive what's meant for you. As long as your mind is consumed with strategies on how to fix it by yourself, you're missing the space where divine intervention steps in. You can't invite heaven into something you refuse to let go of. Surrender is not about giving up. It's about admitting that you've reached the end of what your strength can accomplish, and you're ready to see what grace can do. Control keeps you anxious. Surrender ushers in peace. Control drains your energy. Surrender restores it. Control makes you reactive to every unexpected shift. Surrender makes you stable, even when nothing is going according to plan. That sudden move you're asking for requires a heart that's not clenched in tension, but open in trust. You want a sudden blessing, but you're still holding on like everything depends on you. It's like standing at a closed door, shaking the handle, pushing with all your strength, frustrated at the resistance. While another door is opening behind you, but you can't see it because your focus is fixed on what you're forcing. Letting go feels risky. You fear losing what little control you believe you have, but what if loosening your grip is the very thing that positions you for what's next? There are moments designed to reveal that your hands are not the source. Your plans are not the foundation. Your understanding is not the anchor. The sudden breakthrough doesn't come to validate your control. It comes to dismantle the lie that you were ever alone in the process. You keep asking for a sign, for a shift, for something to change quickly, but heaven is asking if you're willing to clear the space cluttered by fear-driven planning. You can't claim to trust while still running scenarios in your head of everything that could go wrong. The moment you choose to release your need to predict, calculate, and manipulate outcomes, something shifts inside you. You start breathing differently. The tension in your spirit begins to loosen. You start to notice that not everything requires your reaction. Some situations don't need you to fix them. They need you to step back and let what's meant to unfold do so without your interference. It's hard to step aside when you've been conditioned to believe that everything depends on your diligence, your intelligence, your preparation. But there is a difference between being responsible and being burdened by control. There is a difference between showing up in excellence and obsessing over everything that is beyond your reach. You can still be intentional and surrendered. You can still be prepared and peaceful. Letting go doesn't weaken your position. It aligns you with a higher one. There comes a moment where you have to decide if you trust enough to loosen your grip. The release is not weakness, it's an invitation for sudden intervention. There is a sound that rises inside you every time life starts shaking, and it's the voice of fear trying to convince you that panic is the only logical response. Fear has a way of amplifying what could go wrong until it's the only thing you can hear. It makes the future feel heavy, the present feel unstable, and your spirit feel uneasy even when nothing has actually happened yet. Worry rehearses disaster before a single step forward is taken. It makes you live inside hypotheticals, robbed of peace by things that haven't even touched your reality. But somewhere inside, deeper than the noise, there is another voice. It doesn't shout like fear. It doesn't demand attention with urgency and chaos. It whispers with calm assurance, and it reminds you that you don't have to live in constant reaction to what might happen. That voice is faith, and it becomes louder when you choose stillness over panic. Stillness is not inactivity, it's inner stability. It's the decision to anchor your emotions before you respond. It's the refusal to be dragged by every thought that fear throws at you. Panic thrives on speed. It wants you to rush your decisions, rush your words, rush your assumptions. It pushes you to react before you've even had a chance to breathe. Fear wants urgency. Faith invites stillness. Stillness is strength because it creates space for perspective. When you pause instead of spiraling, you give yourself permission to see beyond the immediate emotion. Fear clouds your vision, stillness clears it. You begin to recognize that not every thought that enters your mind deserves your agreement. Fear speaks in exaggeration. Faith responds with clarity. There is power in choosing not to match the energy of chaos. When a situation rises to intimidate you, fear wants you to rise with the same aggression. But strength is seen when you refuse to be emotionally dragged into every battle that tries to summon you. Some storms don't require you to fight harder. They require you to be still longer. Faith is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to choose a different response, even when fear is present. You might still feel the tremble of uncertainty, but faith reminds you that feelings are not dictators. They are signals. You get to decide whether they lead you or simply inform you. Stillness gives you authority over your reactions. It gives you time to hear the difference between fear's noise and faith's whisper. Fear speaks from what is seen. Faith speaks from what is promised. When you learn to be still, your spirit starts tuning into a frequency that fear cannot interrupt. Worry becomes loud when your mind is busy, but peace becomes real when your soul is still. In stillness, you begin to recognize that not everything is as urgent as fear makes it seem. Fear tells you that if you don't act immediately, everything will fall apart. Faith tells you that rushing is how you miss divine timing. There are things that look like delays, but are actually divine pauses meant to protect you from premature movement. Stillness allows you to wait without collapsing internally. It allows you to be present without living under the pressure of needing every answer right now. Panic wants you to react because reaction is rarely aligned with wisdom. Stillness allows wisdom to surface before words or actions are released. Faith is not loud, but it is steady. It doesn't pressure you, it anchors you. It gives you the ability to sit in a space that once made you anxious and not be ruled by the same fear. You begin to realize that peace is not what happens when everything is calm outside. Peace is what you carry within you even while the storm is raging. When you choose stillness, you take back authority over your inner world. You stop letting every circumstance decide your emotional state. Fear might still knock, but it won't get the final say. Panic might still try to rise, but you won't be moved by it. Stillness trains you to hear the subtle shift where faith becomes louder than fear. It doesn't happen with one moment, but through consistent choices. Every time you pause, instead of panicking, breathe instead of reacting, anchor yourself instead of spiraling, you reinforce the voice of faith. And suddenly, what once triggered you does not have the same power. Your peace becomes your weapon, your calm becomes your strategy, your stillness becomes your declaration that fear does not get to control your narrative. There comes a moment in every journey where you start questioning if what you are waiting for is even still meant for you. The delay feels heavy, like evidence that maybe your prayer was overlooked or your name was skipped in the lineup of blessings. You watch others receive what you've been believing for, And something inside begins to whisper that maybe you were forgotten in the process. Delay has a way of planting seeds of doubt, making you wonder if your obedience was wasted or your faith misplaced. You begin to replay every step you took, trying to find where you might have gone wrong, as if a perfect performance could have sped things up. But delay does not equal abandonment. Just because the answer hasn't arrived on your timeline doesn't mean heaven went silent on your request. There are blessings that require timing, not because you're unworthy of them, but because the preparation attached to them is sacred. What you're waiting for might already exist, but the version of you that can carry it with maturity is still being formed. Delay is not punishment, it is development. When nothing seems to be moving, something is still moving in you. Every day that feels like nothing is changing is actually a day that something is building inside your character. Impatience wants you to despise the wait, but wisdom teaches you to recognize delay as a space where roots grow deeper before the visible fruit appears. You might feel hidden, but hidden seasons are not forgotten seasons. They are protection seasons. When a seed is buried in the ground, it looks like it has been covered and forgotten, but underneath the soil is where the real transformation begins. It has to break before it can sprout. It has to be pressed in darkness before it can reach for the light. You may feel like you've been placed in a season that doesn't reflect your potential, but buried is not the same as forgotten. Buried is a position of preparation. When you understand that, delay no longer offends you. Instead of asking, why is it taking so long? Your spirit begins to ask, what is being shaped in me during this wait? The delay is building endurance. And endurance is not a passive thing. Endurance is strength stretching. It is faith conditioning itself to last beyond a moment of excitement. It is developing the ability to stand steady even when the environment around you gives no visible sign of change. Everyone can have faith for a moment. Endurance is what keeps faith alive when the moment turns into a season. Delay strips away the illusion that faith is only proven through quick results. It teaches you that real trust continues even when the answer is not immediate. Trust says, even if it's taking longer than I expected, I still believe it's on the way. There is a subtle but powerful shift that happens when you stop viewing delay as rejection and start seeing it as alignment. What if the reason it hasn't happened yet is because the timing you wanted would have cost you something your future self would regret losing? There are things you prayed for that you weren't ready to sustain. There are doors you knocked on that would have opened too soon and crushed you under the weight of responsibility you hadn't grown into yet. Delay is not God withholding goodness from you. It's goodness holding you until you're ready to handle what you asked for. Being delayed does not mean being denied. You are still seen, still known, still part of the plan. Heaven is not struggling to remember your name. You are not a forgotten file in a stack of unanswered prayers. You are part of a process that is more intentional than your impatience can comprehend. Delay is not the enemy. Doubt is. The longer you wait, the easier it is to entertain the idea that maybe you were forgotten. But faith stands guard against that lie. Faith speaks into the delay and says, just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen suddenly. The same God who seems to move slowly in the process can move instantly in the manifestation. And when it comes, all the waiting will make sense, not because of the blessing itself, but because of the strength you gained while you were waiting for it. There are prayers you've prayed and desires you've spoken into the atmosphere, but heaven does not just respond to words, it responds to obedience. Obedience is more than agreement, it is movement in the direction of what you say you believe. Many people want breakthrough, but few want the process that breakthrough requires. Breakthrough does not just knock on your door. It often waits on the other side of a step you've been hesitant to take. You may have asked for transformation, but transformation comes wrapped in instructions that stretch your comfort. Obedience is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, small, inconvenient steps that don't even look spiritual. It is choosing discipline when you feel discouraged. It is still showing up when your emotions tell you to give up. It is being kind when it would be easier to be cold. It is moving forward when you don't have the full picture. Obedience means trusting the instruction even when you don't understand the outcome. And it's in those unseen, uncelebrated acts of obedience that your breakthrough begins to take shape. Breakthrough is often hidden, not in the moment you receive the blessing, but in the moment you choose alignment over comfort. There are instructions you've ignored because they didn't feel significant enough. You expected a dramatic sign, but direction sometimes comes through subtle conviction. That nudge in your spirit to let go of something that drains you. That quiet pull to step away from what keeps you stuck. That moment your peace is disturbed and you know something has to shift even if you can't explain why. Obedience hears that and responds. Delay in obedience creates delay in manifestation, not because the blessing is far, but because alignment is what positions you to receive it. Breakthrough cannot meet you in disobedience. It is waiting in the place where surrender meets action. When you start moving in obedience, you activate things in the unseen. Steps of obedience produce momentum. Heaven responds to movement, not just intention. Intention without obedience keeps you inspired but stuck. You can talk about change and still remain in the same place if obedience doesn't carry your words forward. Breakthrough is not magic, it is partnership. It is heaven moving as you move. It is grace meeting your effort. It is favor filling the gaps you cannot cover. Obedience may cost you comfort, but it protects your calling. There are things you're praying for that require a version of you that obedience is shaping. Without obedience, blessing can become burdensome. With obedience, blessing becomes sustainable. You may feel like your obedience is going unnoticed because the results are not immediate, but obedience is never wasted. Every yes, every sacrifice, every moment you chose character over convenience is building something you can't fully see yet. When you obey, you step out of your own way. You stop trying to force outcomes and instead align yourself with what has already been prepared for you. Breakthrough doesn't need to be manufactured. It needs to be met in the place of obedience. There are answers waiting on the other side of a step you've been delaying. Maybe it's letting go of something you've been afraid to release because it gave you a sense of control. Maybe it's walking through a door you've been hesitant to enter because you don't feel ready. Obedience doesn't wait for readiness. It creates readiness. The moment you move, strength begins to meet you. Fear weakens when you take action. Confusion clears as you take the step. Many people wait for clarity before moving, but clarity often comes after obedience, not before it. The path doesn't always light up until your foot touches the ground. The breakthrough you're waiting for is not always about external change. Sometimes it begins internally the moment you choose obedience over hesitation. Heaven is not withholding from you, it's waiting for you. Waiting for your yes, waiting for your movement, waiting for your trust to translate into action. Obedience may not always make sense in the moment, but it makes room for what is meant for you. And when what is meant for you arrives, it will meet a version of you that obedience has prepared. There is a deep tension that lives inside you when you've been praying for a sudden move, but still trying to control every outcome with your own hands. You say you trust that things will shift, but a part of you still holds on like everything depends on your effort. You keep checking, calculating, overthinking, and trying to make sure nothing slips out of place. But the truth is, sudden moves of divine intervention often come in moments where you finally stop striving. There is a point where effort becomes exhaustion and you start to realize that what you're wrestling with was never meant to be forced. You don't have to manipulate what is divinely aligned. What is meant for you does not require you to beg for it, chase it, or exhaust yourself trying to keep it. Doors that belong to you do not need you to break yourself to walk through them. When heaven is ready to release something, it won't be your force that opens it, it will be your surrender. Forcing outcomes comes from fear that if you don't act fast enough, you'll miss your moment. Fear that if you don't hold everything together, it will fall apart. But fear-driven action leads to frustration. It makes you feel like no matter what you do, it's never enough. The more you try to control it, the more it slips from your grasp. But something powerful happens when you shift from striving to trusting. Trust doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing only what aligns with peace and letting go of what drains you. It means moving with intention, not desperation. It means withdrawing your energy from places that leave you empty and positioning your spirit in expectancy instead of anxiety. Trust says, if it's mine, I don't have to chase it. I just have to be ready when it comes. Trust frees you from the pressure to force connections, force timing, force growth. Force recognition. There are blessings that can't reach you while your hands are clenched in urgency. There are relationships that can't align because you're still holding on to what you're afraid to release. There are opportunities meant to flow toward you, but they can't reach you because your energy is tied up trying to hold together what should have already been laid down. When you stop forcing, you start flowing. Flow is where grace meets you. Flow is where ease begins to replace strain. Flow doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means you stop fighting against the timing of your own destiny. You stop trying to open doors that don't match your assignment. You stop insisting on being understood by rooms that were never designed to recognize your value. Force says, I will make this happen. Flow says, what is meant for me will not miss me. There is a level of freedom in that revelation. It releases the pressure off your shoulders. You are no longer a hostage to urgency. Your spirit can finally breathe. Trust reminds you that sudden shifts do not come from panic. They come from alignment. When heaven moves suddenly, it is not responding to anxiety. It is responding to readiness. Readiness is not about having it all figured out. It's about being available, open, surrendered. The moment you stop trying to control the process is often the moment everything starts to move in your favor, because divine timing does not operate under pressure. It operates under purpose. There are things you've been trying to fix with force that could be resolved in an instant if you switched your posture from striving to trusting. That peace you're craving won't come from getting everything under control. It will come from releasing the illusion that you needed control in the first place. Some breakthroughs won't unlock until you stop pushing and start positioning. Positioning is quiet but powerful. It is leaning into trust even when nothing has changed yet. It is choosing peace before the outcome arrives. It is standing still with confidence that what is coming will come suddenly, and you won't have to break yourself to receive it. There is a shift that happens in your life the moment you stop living in constant anticipation of what could go wrong and start positioning your heart in expectation of what could go right. Trust is not just a feeling, it is a posture. It changes the way you think, walk, speak, and wait. Worry looks ahead and imagines disaster. Trust looks ahead and imagines fulfillment. Worry scans the horizon for threats. Trust scans the horizon for signs. When you live in worry, your vision is filtered through fear and everything looks unstable. Even blessings can feel like burdens because fear convinces you they won't last. But when you choose trust, your vision shifts. You begin to recognize subtle alignments, small confirmations, unexpected encouragements, and little doors opening that once would have gone unnoticed because you were too busy preparing for the worst. Trust trains your spirit to notice what worry would have dismissed. Worry makes you reactive, but trust makes you ready. There is a difference. Reactive people move from a place of fear, responding to everything like it's a threat. Ready people move from a place of peace, prepared but not panicked, expectant but not anxious. Trust doesn't ignore reality, it just refuses to be ruled by it. You can acknowledge the challenge without surrendering to fear. You can see the uncertainty without letting it paralyze your faith. Trust is an inner agreement with peace that says, even if I don't know how this will unfold, I believe I am not alone in this process. Trust is a quiet strength. It doesn't announce itself loudly, but it stabilizes everything it touches. It allows you to remain steady while others scramble. It allows you to walk through a season that used to break you and still carry calm in your spirit. Trust shifts your internal narrative. Instead of asking, what if it doesn't work? You start asking, what if it does? Instead of saying, I don't see a way, you begin to whisper, maybe the way is being prepared. Instead of rehearsing fear, you rehearse faith. And without even realizing it, your atmosphere begins to change. Your words sound different. Your energy feels different. Your presence carries something steady, something anchored. Trust is not passive. It is active alignment. It is choosing daily to lean into peace, even when anxious thoughts try to pull you back. It is deciding to keep showing up with expectation, even when there's no physical proof that the shift is near. Trust is believing that sudden doesn't mean random. Sudden simply means unseen preparation has reached its moment of release. While you were waiting, something was forming. While you were praying, something was positioning. While you were trusting, something was aligning. And there is a point where what has been aligning invisibly becomes visible instantly. That's what a sudden move looks like. It may feel like it came out of nowhere, but it came out of the place where trust was building quietly. Worry would have made you miss it because worry expects chaos, not breakthrough. Trust keeps your spirit open, ready to receive, ready to respond when the moment arrives. Trust makes you available to opportunity. Worry makes you unavailable because worry distracts you, drains you, and keeps you preoccupied with fear. Some doors are not missed because they never opened. They are missed because when they opened, worry had your attention elsewhere. Trust keeps you present. It keeps you grounded enough to recognize the moment when grace shows up. Trust doesn't eliminate the storm, but it anchors you so that when the sudden shift comes, you are in the right position to step into it. There are sudden blessings waiting for people who are stable enough to hold them, and trust is what gives you that stability. You don't have to predict everything. You don't have to figure out every step. You don't have to stress over what you can't see. You just have to stand and trust long enough for the sudden move to meet you.